Hare Krishna, everyone. So we're going to have a Bhagavad Gita class now. So I'm just going to sing Chairada Madhava. If you'd like, you can just follow along with me, repeat after me. Chairada Madhava Jaya Gunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Chanavalabha Girivaradare Yashodanandana Braja Chanaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Gopi Chanavalabha Girivaradare Yashodanandana Brajashanaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Radha Madhava Jaya Gunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Chanavalabha Girivaradare Yashodanandana Braja Chanaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare So I'm going to repeat once. Dvau imau purushau loke ksharas chakshara eva cha ksharas sarvani bhutani Kutashtoksara uchyate. So please repeat after me. Dvavima purushao loke. Ksharas chakshara evacha. Kshara sarvani bhutani. Kutashtoksara uchyate. Dvavimau purushau loke. Ksharas chakshara evacha. Kshara sarvani bhutani. Kutashtoksara uchyate. Dvavimau purushau loke. Ksharas chakshara evacha. Kshara sarvani bhutani. Kutashtoksara uchyate. So anyone would like to try it himself? Dvau imau purushau loke. Ksharas chakshara evacha. Kshara sarvani bhutani. Kutashtoksara uchyate. Anyone else would like to try it? Okay. So we can try the word for word meaning. So please repeat after me. Dvau, two. Imau, these. Purushau, living entities. Loke, in the world. Kshara, fallible. Cha, and. Akshara, infallible. Eva, certainly. Cha, and. Oneness. Akshara, infallible. Uchyate is said. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. There are two classes of beings, the fallible and the infallible. In the material world, every living entity is fallible, and in the spiritual world, every living entity is called infallible. Purport. As already explained, the Lord in His incarnation as Vyasadeva compiled the Vedanta Sutra. Here the Lord is giving in summary the contents of the Vedanta Sutra. He says that the living entities, who are innumerable, can be divided into two classes, the fallible and the infallible. The living entities are eternally separated parts and parcels of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. When they are in contact with the material world, they are called Jiva Bhuta, and the Sanskrit words given here, Kshara Sarvani Bhutani, mean that they are fallible. Those who are in oneness with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, however, are called infallible. Oneness does not mean that they have no individuality, but that there is no disunity. They are all agreeable to the purpose of the creation. Of course, in the spiritual world, there is no such thing as creation. But since the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as stated in the Vedanta Sutra, is the source of all emanations, that conception is explained. According to the statements of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna, there are two classes of living entities. The Vedas give evidence of this, so there is no doubt about it. The living entities who are struggling in this world with the mind and five senses have their material bodies which are changing. As long as a living entity is conditioned, his body changes due to contact with matter. Matter is changing, so the living entity appears to be changing. But in the spiritual world, the body is not made of matter. Therefore, there is no change. In the material world, the living entity undergoes 6 changes: birth, growth, duration, reproduction, then dwindling and vanishing. These are the changes of the material body. But in the spiritual world, the body does not change. There's no old age, there's no birth, there's no death. There all exists in oneness. Kshara sarvani bhutani, any living entity who has come in contact with matter, beginning from the first created being, Brahma, down to a small ant, is changing its body. Therefore, they are fallible. In the spiritual world, however, they are always liberated in oneness. Om Agyanatimirandasya Kyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupam Gadamayam Padati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Ruta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrachatam Sagana Lidita Tam Sachivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parichanachitam Vishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Saguna Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Chakatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gorangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamani Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasati Gaura Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare So, thank you so much for coming tonight for this class. Before we start with the class, I would like to seek the blessings of everyone here present tonight, so I can speak something of, of value, and also can learn myself from this amazing verse. So when I read this verse, I mainly so two main words in that purport, in that translation, and that was the word fallible and infallible. Now, English is not my first language, so I wanted to make sure I perfectly understand what is meant with those two words. So I looked up the definition, and the definition of fallible means able or likely to make mistakes, and infallible means never wrong, failing, or making a mistake. So I think this is good to know beforehand. So in regards to being fallible, I remember that story which Keshav Maharaj shared in his previous classes, which was quite a nice story. So the story goes something like that. So a man once was walking down a street, and then he walked past a farm, and then he saw two farmers working. So they were kind of like on their work. One of the men, he was digging up the ground, putting all his effort into it, digging everything up and putting all the earth and the mud on the side. And then the second person was taking that same earth and that same mud and putting it back into the hole. So this guy was walking past, and he was very bewildered, thinking like, what's going on here? So he's asking them like, excuse me, like, what are you guys doing? Like, one person is digging up and the other person putting it back in. And they explained like, yeah, usually we're actually 3 people doing this job. And the third person usually is planting the seeds for the vegetables. But unfortunately, he's sick today, so they had to work without him today. So I think this story nicely explains how, we're very prone to make a lot of mistakes. It's a very mundane example, but it nicely explains how we're, definitely fallible. So now I would like to ask a quick question to you guys. So who here has done a mistake before? Please raise your hands. Okay, who here has done a mistake before? Yeah. Okay. Nice. So we got two people which never done a mistake. I'm very happy. So yeah, and who has done a mistake which he feels like up until this day he's actually still regretting having done that mistake? Yeah. Yeah. So sometimes mistakes can be very small, but sometimes they can be also very severe, and like kind of we keep carrying them with us, and it can end up in regrets or grudges, resentment, and it can last all the way up till our end of our life. And so mistakes can be something very small, but also something very severe. So we really want to be aware of that and look into that. So I also wanted to throw in some stats. So I looked it up, and actually research suggests that regardless of the activity or task someone performs, the human is prone to make 3 to 6 errors per hour, which on average accumulates to about 50 mistakes per day. So this adds up to about 18,000 mistakes per year, and amasses to about 1.5 million mistakes per lifetime. So it's something which is difficult to avoid, right? But yeah, I'm with this class, I'm hoping to bring the listeners a bit closer to living a life without mistakes. So everyone here listening, hopefully at the end of this class, you'll be actually infallible. So it's just a humble aspiration I'm having. So let's see what's gonna happen. But you need to stick with me till the end. That's the only thing. Okay. So infallible. When we speak about infallible, it's mentioned in purport that this is the situation when we're in the spiritual world, right? So now, why are we infallible in the spiritual world? Because we uncover our true identity. And our true identity, according to the scriptures, is Sat Chit Ananda. So Sat Chit Ananda means eternal, full of bliss, and full of knowledge. And therefore, when we uncover that true identity, we are free from mistakes because we're all-knowing and we're eternal. There might be only like certain exceptions, like Yoga Maya, which facilitates certain seemingly mistakes in order to perform some leelas. But other than that, we're free from mistakes. Now, in the material world, we're called fallible because we're struggling with the mind and our 5 senses, which actually cover our true identity. So this actually twists our true identity into a false identity. So in the material world, we're not Sat Chit Ananda. We're actually the opposite. We're Asat, Achit, and Nirananda. So I want to go a bit deeper into that. So Asat means actually the opposite of eternal. So in the material world, we're actually temporary. So it's mentioned as well in the purport that we're going through all those different changes, right? We're going through birth, we're going through growth, we're having some duration, reproduction is there, deterioration, and ultimately annihilation. So yeah, every one of us goes through those changes, right? We can see it like our body is constantly changing, like from when we're a small kid all the way up to when we're grown-ups. And we also say oftentimes that our body is not so much actually a fixed entity, it's more like a process, right? Like even in science we can see that approximately every, I think, 7 years, something like that, our body is actually a completely different one than it used to be. So we're constantly going through changes. Now, Achit is the opposite from all-knowing. So we're not all-knowing in the material world. We struggle with certain difficulties. So we have, number one, we have imperfect senses, right? So for example, let's say, can you see what's behind that wall, right? You can't. You can only assume what's behind that wall. So our eyes, for example, are very powerful, but they're also limited. So we can't perceive what's happening behind this wall outside. Now, you can maybe see through the window, and let's say, let's give an example. You might see someone walking past with a plate, and you see like something like yellowish on that plate, and then you're thinking like, okay, what could that be? I'm not sure what it is entirely. I'm not really sure, but I think it could be halva. And you think like, okay, I think there's some halva there on this plate. So then the second mistake is we fall under illusion. So now you see that and you start telling yourself while you're sitting in this temple room, okay, they're serving halva later on, so I'm really excited. After this class, I'm going to go for some halva. And then we're actually, the next step is we're prone to make mistakes. So the thing is, you're not only making that assumption, now maybe... that's the next step. So we're prone to make mistakes. And then the fourth step is we got the tendency to cheat others based on those mistakes. So now there might be someone else sitting next to you and you said like, oh, sorry, Prabhu, do you know what they're serving after this class? And you're like, yeah, they're serving some halva. And so the person gets really excited, but then actually later on you might find out there is no halva, there's just sabji. I mean, nothing against sabji, but yeah, so just saying that's a mundane example of how we're prone to make a lot of mistakes. They're based on our imperfect senses. So the next one is Nirananda. So we're not full of bliss. We're actually, we can't really find everlasting happiness in the material world because there's the defects of material happiness, right? So oftentimes we say there's 4 defects of material happiness. So anything material you want to get and you look for happiness in it, you'll come about those 4 problems. So the first one is you can't get it, right? Any one of us ever experienced that? You want something like a new phone or a new car, and unfortunately you can't get it. It's too expensive, you can't afford it, it's just not possible. So that's very frustrating. Now the next one is, okay, you do get it, but it doesn't satisfy you, right? Anyone experienced that before? It's like you get that new phone or like you get a new car and it doesn't really make you happy. You thought it's going to make you happy, but it doesn't really. So then another defect is, okay, you get it, but then after some time you get bored of it, or it doesn't really last, right? So probably people also can resonate with that. I can also resonate with that. Like sometimes you get something and it doesn't really give you that satisfaction, it doesn't really last long. And like with phones, for example, every 2 years we need to get a new phone, isn't it, right? Because we're like bored of the old phone. Now the fourth one is you get it, and maybe it does satisfy you for some time, but it comes with distress, right? So now let's speak about the phone again. I definitely remember that, like you're saving up some money, you're looking forward to kind of buying a new phone. Maybe it's a new iPhone, brand new, costs a lot of money, new screen, very nice, and you get it. And then you're walking down the street, and then for some reason you got a bit of slippery hands, and the phone is just slipping through your hands and it's falling face down on the floor, and it's just painful. And then you lift it up and you see the front screen is broken. It costs about £300 to repair the front screen. You're like, okay, that was it. So everything is prone to come with distress as well. So and everything materially really which we're gonna we're gonna figure out that we're gonna come about those difficulties, those defects of material happiness. So the material condition makes us fallible and also makes us making a lot of mistakes. So now I would like to talk about, I think there's like 3 types of mistakes. So there's one mistake which we do, which is without Krishna, right? So I call this I think that's like mode of ignorance, when we do a mistake without Krishna. So now I'm not sure if we have a mic or something. Pretty good for people on that. Yeah, maybe. Because I want to give a story which kind of signifies that. So did anyone here know the story of Gajendra? Yes. So maybe Mataji, when Prabhu rings the mic, you can just quickly explain how you would think, very quickly, the story of Gajendra, and how you think he did a mistake without Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Right, Gajendra was a king of elephant, story short, right? He was a king of elephant, and he was very happy all the time with all his wives and children. And he was once he went to bathe in the lake, and then a crocodile just held his one of his foot, and then he thought that he would be able to come out, and then after struggling, he couldn't come out, and then he started calling for his family members who tried to help him. Nobody could help him, and lastly, he called out for Lord Vishnu, which is Gajendra Moksha. The prayer is very beautiful. But before that, he was King Indradyumna. And he while leaving home and all, he was meditating in the forest. And some sages were passing by, and he was deep in meditation. He didn't bow down to them, so they cursed him. That's how he became an elephant.
Very nice. Thank you. How would you feel like he made a mistake without Krishna? Like that
because
mistake?
he was calling out to his family members, and he was calling out to all the Devi Devtas, not to Krishna. And finally, he remembered, because he was a great devotee in his previous life. He remembered about Krishna, and then he started saying the prayers. He got a flower in his trunk, and he lifted it up, and he was at on the verge of death. Because being a creature of land, he couldn't fight a creature of water. He was like wasting his life, and he could not fight with a crocodile. That's how. And then finally, when he saw that that was the end, and nobody could help him, all his family members left him, and the crocodile was winning. So then he remembered Krishna, and he started praying to Krishna.
Very nice. Thank you so much. Very nice explanation. Yeah, exactly. It's kind of like when he went into the river, right? He was like, it was mainly about for sense gratification. He wanted to enjoy, and he didn't really think of Krishna. But then later on, he remembered Krishna. So that was kind of a mistaken mode of ignorance, or without Krishna. Now, a second type of mistake is a mistake against Krishna, and that's kind of in mode of passion. So one story which I thought about is the story of the Brahmanas' wives, like when the cowherd boys went to beg for charity, and the Brahmanas didn't want to give anything, so they went to the wives of the Brahmanas. Anyone here knows that story? Yes? So, Mataji, again, if you maybe just quickly could explain the story, and also how do you think that was a mistake against Krishna? Like this time, yeah.
Yes, the Brahmanas were there, and Krishna wanted to test them. So he sent his friends to ask for some food from the Brahmanas, because they were doing yajna, so they refused. They didn't realize that Krishna was asking, and even though the friend says it was for Krishna, because they didn't think that Krishna was the Supreme Lord. And then the friends, they went to the Brahmanas' wives. When they heard that Krishna was asking for something, they took all the offering, they went directly to Krishna. So the Brahmanas, they make big mistake. When they saw their wives going toward Krishna and feeding Krishna, then they realized their mistake.
Nice, nice. So, how can we say it's like a mistake against Krishna? Like, in what way did they?
They were in ignorance, right? That's why they didn't realize that Krishna. Maybe they knew, but they didn't want, because they think that Krishna is just a young boy, and he's stealing butter from others, and also they didn't want to satisfy Krishna. Whereas the wives, maybe they were more knowledgeable than the Brahmanas. They may be Brahmanas, but they were on material platform.
Yeah, very nice. And yeah, exactly. And it's also kind of like for the Brahmanas, right, by kind of insulting, like by not responding to the cowherd boys, they were kind of insulting Krishna's friends, right? And in that sense, insulting Krishna. And in that way, insulting Krishna. And also at the end, when they realized their mistake, they were kind of still too proud, or they just didn't go and apologize to Krishna. So that was a mistake against Krishna, the mode of passion. So now, the third type of mistake is a mistake with Krishna in the mode of goodness. And the story I was thinking about here is Shri Shri Radha Gokulananda ki jai, Shri Shri Sitaram Lakshmana ki jai, Shri Gaurnitai ki jai. The story of Arjuna when he was in the middle of the battlefield and seeing the two armies. Probably some other people as well know the story. So how would you think Arjuna being in the middle of the battlefield between the two armies was a mistake against Krishna. Sorry, with Krishna.
I don't understand the question.
Okay, let me rephrase it. So Arjuna, standing in the middle of the battlefield, could seem like a mistake, right? Because he got overwhelmed, he got bewildered. But while doing this mistake, Krishna was there. So what was the difference of Krishna being there by making in this mistake? I don't know if that was more clear.
Is it that Arjuna looked for, he knew he was at fault, but he looked towards Krishna for guidance.
Yeah. So yeah, we could say it like that. So yeah, that's very nice. So basically, I'm going to expand a bit on that now. So the question is, how can we get free from mistakes, right? That was the initial question. So, and for that, I would like to recite this verse, Bhagavad Gita 5:29, which says, Bhuktaram yakatapasam sarva loka maheshwaram sukhidam sarva bhutanam gyatva mam shantim richati. And also the translation is, a person in full consciousness of me, knowing me to be the ultimate beneficiary of all sacrifices and austerities, the supreme lord of all planets and demigods, and the benefactor and well-wisher of all living entities, attains peace from the pangs of material miseries. So I would like to emphasize the last two lines. Sukhridam sarva bhutanam, the benefactor and well-wisher of all living entities, gyatva mam shantim richati, attains peace from the pangs of material miseries. So now let's try to redefine the word mistake based on that verse. So mistake means something which is not aligned with my plan or my ambition or the aim which I have, right? So, but if we take ourselves out of the center and we put Krishna into the center, then we could redefine mistake as anything which is not aligned with Krishna's plan, right?
I think also what I was thinking of was that when Arjun, Arjun is pure. He's like so like. He's very Krishna conscious, right? And so Krishna will ultimately fulfill. I mean, Krishna fulfills the desires, like his devotees have, right? So Krishna ultimately knows, like, actually, me driving this chariot into the middle of the battlefield for you to see both sides, the Kurus and the Pandavas, like, basically, it's just like, this is not the right decision, but I'm going to do it anyway. I think the mistake comes in because Arjun actually wasn't seeing this like whole situation. Like Krishna was there fulfilling the desire, but Arjuna was actually making a mistake in that way. Is that actually he was doing it for himself? And although Arjuna is a pure devotee, he is without fault. In this way, Krishna arranged for Arjuna to make that mistake, so that the Bhagavad Gita could ultimately come to fruition. So this mistake was, okay, I want to see these sides. Let me, Krishna, drive me in the center so that I can see who I am going to be fighting. And I think ultimately that's where the mistake comes from. He's still praying to Krishna, still saying, Krishna, 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 drive me. But that's where the mistake, I think, comes in the most.
Yeah, very good point. Thank you. And you already touched on the point which I just want to mention now. That's good. So because that's actually the point, yeah. So again, like when we come to the example of Arjuna standing between those two armies, like just the night before he was planning that battle, right? So he was planning on how to fight, how to position themselves and everything. So he was ready to fight. He was determined. But then when that battle actually happened, he asked Krishna to drive between those two armies, right? And then standing there and seeing his friends and family members, his teachers on the other side of the battlefield, he got overwhelmed. So we could say, okay, that was like a mistake, because now he's having like a breakdown, right? But again, that, like as Charlie nicely said, that was just kind of out of his own perspective. But then once he understood that everything is perfectly arranged according to Krishna's plan. So this seemingly mistake was supposed to happen for that conversation to happen. So then you can understand that, okay, that was working according to Krishna's plan. So, right? So when we understand that Krishna is in charge of everything and not a blade of grass is moving without his sanctioning, and we also understand that Krishna is the well-wisher of all the living entities, we can understand that good and bad both happen for a reason, right? And as soon as we put Krishna in the center, our mistakes can turn into a learning experience. And those learning experiences can propel us further on our spiritual path, right? So, yeah, based on this point, there's also a nice story in Black Lotus, which is the biography of His Holiness Bhaktivedanta Maharaj. At one point, Bhaktivedanta Maharaj was in India with Srila Prabhupada, and Srila Prabhupada got injured on his hands and legs. So he was really heavily injured, and he was calling Bhaktivedanta Maharaj and told him to put a paste of neem on his injuries. So then Bhaktivedanta Maharaj was there, and he got really nervous because there was his spiritual master Srila Prabhupada, and was injured, and he had to kind of help him to take care of those wounds. So he became really nervous, and he started to start shaking and everything. And then when he took the paste out, he was shaking so much that he started actually spilling over Srila Prabhupada's dhoti and kurta and everything. And he was getting really nervous, and he was thinking, oh my God, now Srila Prabhupada is going to shout at me, and he's going to be so angry and going to kick me out of the room. But then he didn't hear anything, and then he was slowly opening his eyes and looking into Srila Prabhupada's face, and he saw that Srila Prabhupada was actually smiling. And from that point, he said he got the realization that even if I make a mistake, Srila Prabhupada will always love me and not reject me. And the second realization which he got is that although I do those mistakes, that doesn't mean that I continue making mistakes, but I should try to learn and improve and try to become better and better. So this is maybe a bit more like a mundane example, but it can really show us as well how we can really learn something from those mistakes. So the question we have to ask ourselves is how to connect mistakes to Krishna and find meaning in our failures, right? So based on that point, my mentor, he oftentimes emphasized two questions which we can ask ourselves to really bring Krishna back into the center and turn a mistake into a learning experience. And those two questions are, and I would like to invite you as well to really reflect on those questions the next time you walk into a mistake or a difficult situation. And those two questions are, number one, what is it that Krishna wants me to learn? And number two, how does Krishna want me to react in this situation? So those are two very, very good questions, and immediately that will put such a situation back into perspective, and we can put Krishna back into the center. And when we do that, we can really, we see that it's becoming a learning experience, and it's happening for a reason. It's happening according to Krishna's plan, and in that sense, it's not a mistake. It's a mistake by our own definition, but not if we put Krishna into the center. So I would like to leave you with one last quote by His Holiness Sachinanda Maharaj, where he said that whenever something really important is about to take place, then so many obstacles come before you. And these obstacles are a confirmation that indeed this is something important. So yeah, that was my class. So I would like to open up for any questions, comments, clarifications, feedback, anything you'd like to add to the class. Thank you very much.
I have a question.
Yes.
Thank you for the class, Prabhu. I was just going to ask, actually, closer. So I was just going to ask, there was one specific part. I was listening online upstairs, and one specific thing you said stood out to me, and it was that sometimes we make mistakes that are so we perceive them as so big that they even at the moment of death we can think of them even at that. And death is in Gita, it's a very crucial part of this experience. Is that actually it's the final test of this lifetime. So I was just wondering, is there some is there some way to kind of, because obviously these other things you've said, they kind of recontextualize these mistakes. Like now you can grow and learn from them, but even if there's some growth or learning happening, you can still look back and think, okay, that was really cringe that I did that, or So if something like that is still bugging us, like years down the line, how can we recontextualize that? Because to think that that could come up at the moment of death, it's quite frightening actually.
So thank you. Very nice question. So if I understood it correctly, I understood. Throughout our whole lifetime, we can make a lot of different mistakes, and some of them can be very severe. And how can we make sure that at the end of life, in that crucial moment, those mistakes won't our focus won't be too much on those mistakes, right? So how can we deal with them? How can we come at peace with them? Is that correct? Okay. It's a very nice question. So, I think there's a couple points. Definitely, generally, when mistakes happen, we want to reflect on them. We really want to, even if it's painful, we want to go into them, we want to analyze them. With questions like these, we can really put things into perspective and learn the lesson from it, right? Because that's also a function of karma. Like, as long as we don't learn a lesson from an event, the event will come again and again and again. So it's very crucial for us to really learn the lessons from those events. Now, some events might be very tragic or even traumatic, and it can be too painful to get into it at that very moment. So there's other options as well, like generally you can actually see that even in psychology, if there's any events which are older than 14 months or something like that. I think I looked that up recently. And whenever you go back to an event and you have emotions of guilt, regret, shame, fear, that means you're mentally still trapped in that past experience. And that can be very harmful, even on a psychological level. It can, our consciousness is still captured in that moment, and it can trigger a lot of stress responses, cortisol and all that stuff. So then we can really go into those past experiences, and we need to reflect on, okay, what actually happened there. We need to learn, okay, what are the good and the bad things which came from that. And then also we want to learn the lesson, because the last question which we kind of want to ask ourselves is, well, have I learned enough to not get into that situation again? And that will give us kind of that reassurance that, okay, this is done. I went through that. It was needed. I learned my lesson, and I know now how to deal with a similar event in the future. So I think it takes a lot of introspection, reflection. Can be difficult. So sometimes maybe you also need help from someone else. But yeah, it's just really going through those events and finding lessons. I hope that answered your question. Okay, thank you. Any other questions, points, comments?
So you're saying we should learn from our mistakes. What lessons can I draw from those mistakes? Right, so what next? What's the next process after that? So I've learned I can extract a few lessons from my past activities, and so I won't repeat them again. What's the end goal? Where is this going?
So the way I understood the question is that once you learn that lessons, what are you going to do with them, or
Yeah,
is that correct?
What next? Yeah.
Okay. we just want to be in a mental space where we're not feeling those bad emotions anymore to those past events, so it can mentally free us up and can allow us to focus on Krishna, right? Which is our aim. And then also by learning those mistakes, it's not just a mental exercise or anything like that, but you really want to become a different person after that exercise, right? After reflecting on those things, you really want to have a different consciousness, a different mental state. And in that sense, you next time when you come into that situation, you'll catch yourself before you do it. And that may take some time. You might do the mistake a couple of times, but at some point you're able to catch yourself and not walk into the same mistake again. And yeah, like Charlie said, it just helps us to, at the end of life, be in a state where we don't have regrets, right? One of the big things people at the end of life, when they did some studies on that as well, like what are people thinking about at the end of their lives, and one question was about they're thinking about all the different things they regret having done in their life or not having done. So it's very important that we can also come at peace with those things, you know. Yeah, I hope that was good.
Thank you.
Yes, Mataji?
So would you say that we need to process them from our system? And do you think we will get forgiveness for what we have, for the mistake we have committed? Do you think?
We give forgiveness for the mistakes which we have committed. Yeah, I mean, ultimately, some things we can rectify or make up again, right? So then we should try to do that. You know, we also have this practice here, living in the temple, that whenever we commit a mistake, knowingly or unknowingly to other devotees, we want to make up for it, right? We want to apologize to that person. We want to maybe do some service for them. So as long as there's an opportunity to make up for them, we should try that. Sometimes we might not have the opportunity. Sometimes maybe the person is not even around anymore. And so in that situation, we can still mentally do it as well. And because, part of that person is still in our memories as well. And so we can actually still talk to that person in that sense and really apologize and try to come at peace like that. So yeah, we can still do it. And as long as we're really learning the lesson, and also by putting Krishna into the center, we can see, okay, that happened for a reason, right? Krishna wanted this to happen. So again, what is it that Krishna wanted me to learn in this situation? And how does he want me to react in this situation? And that can immediately give us much more perspective. So I hope that was an answer to your question.
Thank you, Hare Krishna. Thank you for the nice class.
Thank you so much. Okay, Jai. Thank you so much. Srila Prabhupada ki. Jai.
His Grace Roman Prabhu ki.
Ananta Goti Vaishnava ki.